Hi everyone, my name is Patrick Kelly. I'm the Director of Education at Stokes Nature Center, and welcome to another Canyon Conversation. Today we're very happy to be joined by Karolina Paquin, all the way out from Svalbard in the Arctic Circle. Hello, Karolina.
Hello.
How are you doing in your eternal Arctic summer right now?
I'm doing pretty good. We're mid-July, so we're actually quite warm up here. It's about the highest temperatures we'll get all year of a tropical maximum, maybe 10 degrees.
Nice, and that's 10 centigrade, yeah?
Yeah, sorry, Americans. I'm actually Canadian, so I unfortunately have no idea how things work in Fahrenheit. But yeah, degrees Celsius.
Okay. Still sweater weather.
Yes. Oh God, I don't think I've ever walked around in a t-shirt really. Willfully. Yeah.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for joining us all the way out again from Svalbard at the SvalSat station as a part of the satellite company KSAT. We're sad we don't have SmallSat this year, where you all would usually come and give a presentation at the Nature Center, but again, very happy that you can join us all the way from 8 hours across the globe. But yeah, so let's jump right in a little bit about yourself. So who are you? What do you do? And tell us a little bit about your journey working with satellites and then coming to work in Svalbard.
Yeah, it's a bit of a long story, so I'll try and give you the best executive summary I can manage. Yep, as you said, the name is Karolina Paquin. Canadians might recognize me as being a Quebecer with that kind of last name. So I'm originally from Montreal. And I came to Svalbard basically almost accidentally in a way. I was actually on my way back home after finishing university. And I was supposed to be looking for work in Canada. But due to serendipity and yeah, some nice things that happened, I ended up on Svalbard, where I had done some field work and some courses again. And from there on, I found out basically that SvalSat could be a really interesting place for me to work. So I chose to basically stick around and apply to the jobs, and eventually I got the gig, basically. So that's as short a thing as I can make it. So on my way back to Canada. I've been here now for actually 6 years, and I've been working with KSAT about 4.5 years. So I started out as an operations engineer in our operations room. So for those of you who maybe don't know what that would be, it's just like a control room from the movies with a big panel of screens, and you have your operators located to run whatever it is that they're running. In this case, we run the SvalSat ground station. So I did that for quite a few years. And then now I've actually recently changed to we call it a daytime job, so you're not working a shift. So here Monday to Friday, and the current position is actually that of a service manager. So I get to basically take care of one of our customers. In this particular case, it's EUMETSAT. And so I basically make sure that the maintenance of their equipment is running okay, take care of any kind of problems or cases coming in, and also get involved with their future next generation equipment installations. So I have my hand in quite a few pots. So it's a challenging job, and it's my dream job basically. So yeah, that was it.
Excellent. Well, what kind of education and experience, I guess, prepared you for this job? You know, out here, we don't exactly have majors for satellite control room operation and project space managers. So what did you earn your degrees in, and where did you have to go in order to gain the experience necessary to land that job?
Exactly. It's a bit more complicated, I think, than we tell our young people, actually. I myself had always had an interest in space and science. And like you said, you can't get an undergraduate in space management. You can get various engineering or physics or any of the other sciences. All have a hand in space science, actually. So I was developing an interest in kind of extreme areas. And what's interesting about polar areas is that you can use them as an analogy for spatial or extraterrestrial work, right? So it kind of fit in very well with my dream of becoming an astronaut, which of course will never happen. But so to be able to get that feeling of working in very extreme environments and working with science and technology. So in my particular interest, I ended up in the biology field of polar sciences. So I completed my degrees in that and pursued fieldwork and courses in polar sciences in both Finland and Norway. So it just worked out that way. For many reasons I could go into, but it just worked out the best way in that way. So that's what brought me in the end to this station. And I have plenty of colleagues from various disciplines that work with satellite data. So I almost feel like I'm in this nest of a very complicated web of satellite industry. So I maybe come from a little bit of an unconventional background, but that's okay because, for example, Norway has one education where you can take a master's in satellite technology at Narvik University. So we do actually take in quite a few people from there. But SvalSat has recognized that in order to thrive and to work and to live on Svalbard, you actually need to recruit from quite a diverse background. So I'm one of those people that kind of come in from the sidelines. And for a lot of reasons, I always knew that I would be much better from the technician side and not necessarily as a full-fledged researcher and professor and that whole line of academics. I knew I always wanted a more practical side to things, more hands-on. So I still wanted to be deeply embedded in science, but not from the academic perspective. So in this way, I ended up here, where you get to basically be in charge of making sure that our science data gets transferred efficiently and clean to the customers. In this case, it's various space agencies from various countries or even private actors, and to make sure that they get their data, which then feeds on to the rest of the network. So in that way, I think by having quite a robust mentality and an interest in wanting to learn as much as I possibly can on as much as I can possibly get my hands on, that kind of has allowed me to thrive in this particular kind of environment, but also workplace where I get to work with mostly engineers, which are awesome. I love my colleagues. They are a fantastic bunch. And so that's, I think I've had some thought over this for a while, and I think that's why I feel like I'm doing really, really well with this particular trajectory.
That's really fascinating. Yeah, it's really nice that you're able to have those technical skills of being able to cross-communicate between, a biology background, which seems quite distant from engineering, but actually be able to, because the emphasis is in how clean are the data and how well am I communicating those data. And so that's really great. It gives hope to those of us that maybe aren't so engineeringly minded that maybe space is for biologists. So that's great.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, it's also about how quickly and how efficiently you take on information and how much self-drive you have to learn. I think in reality, there are very few jobs where you can just come out of university with a particular skill set and then just stop learning.
Yeah.
I don't know of anyone in reality who goes in that way. So for this particular case, I do have a strong interest in learning as much as I can about the different fields of engineering that apply to this ground station. And I, for example, definitely plan on continuing my education on the side, of course. But a lot of stuff I ask, I look up, I read, I find out. And so that gives you the ability to support your colleagues, basically. And to make sure that you know what the customer is talking about, really, right?
Yeah, instead of just nodding and saying, yes, of course, that.
Yeah, no, it's, our workplace, luckily, is very open to saying, I don't know, but I'll find out. Just give me a moment.
That's excellent.
There you go. As long as you come back with the right answer, thorough, and especially with that kind of science background, you get the analytical skills to be able to find out what's important very quickly.
Yeah.
So I would say that that's the best tip in terms of that. I am not doing what I expected to do, and a lot of plans failed along the way. Many plans failed, but this one really worked well.
Excellent. Yeah. Well, let's take a little bit of a pivot and kind of talk about where you're being able to take this call from, which is an
Yes.
Arctic island in the middle of the North Pacific that many of us have never even heard of. So you work in a place called Svalbard, which has a very Scandinavian sounding name. So for those of us who don't know where it is or what it is, tell us about Svalbard and the environment, and how is living there both unique and challenging?
Yeah. So I have to admit, I don't imagine a lot of North Americans will have ever heard of Svalbard. It is a pinprick on the planet, and it very rarely comes into the news feed. So that's totally understandable. I only found out about it. A lot of people, if you've read a lot as a kid, and you read, for example, His Dark Materials, The Golden Compass, there you would have heard of Svalbard. So in those particular sets of books, the lead character basically becomes partners with a polar bear, which happens to be a great warrior, and he helps her fulfill her great mission. So it's 3 books, so it's quite a lot to read. And what's funny is that then you find out that it's a real place. Your geology lesson in grade 6 was didn't quite cover this, but as an adult you find out, oh my goodness, this place is real, and there are polar bears. So we are, if I were to compare it to American geography, we're basically higher, I believe, than anywhere in even Alaska.
Whoa.
Yeah. So it's a range of islands, basically in the Arctic Ocean, and it goes from, I think, about, is it 78 to about 81 degrees latitude? So we're only about 10 degrees off the North Pole. So we are very, very, very far north, all the way at the top of the globe. So on most maps, which primarily focus around the equator, you almost won't see it.
Okay.
That's how far up we are. Yeah.
Wow.
So it basically means we have 24 hours of daylight. So the sun is going to go down for the first time sometime, I think, end of August or something like that. So with the sun basically just rotates in the summer just around you the whole time. And then likewise, in the winter, we have 24 hours of darkness. So, and when we say dark, we really mean it is dark. So November to the end of January is pretty much pitch black.
Wow.
So in that way, it is very extreme. Although I do like to admit, if you go to the office really early in the morning in the winter and then leave really late in the evening, you kind of almost also experience 24 hours of darkness. So, you guys don't quite get away with it.
Yeah. 24 hours of yeah.
Yeah. So some people struggle with these kind of seasonal changes, some don't. There's variations of how well you tolerate it. And luckily, I'm okay with it.
Yeah.
And for the most part, we're actually a high Arctic desert, mostly. So we get very little precipitation. So we don't get the meters of snow that you do. I mean, if we get a meter, I think we're pretty lucky. Our snowpack is very thin. And also that means in the summer, we don't get very much rain. It's more of just like a light drizzle. It's coastal climate, very windy all the time from all directions. You cannot get away from the headwind. And yeah, so we try our best to be able to handle these kind of extreme conditions and still enjoy life. So the station itself that I'm calling you from, we're actually located at about 600 meters elevation. I think you'll have to translate that into feet for me.
Yeah, multiply by 3, so vaguely 1,800 feet, yeah.
There you go, right? So we still have a bit of a pressure difference from sea level to us. And so we're located on a plateau. And one thing that you need for your satellite industry is that you need to be on these very high exposed plateaus, because then you get a really good horizon. So you can point your antennas basically almost anywhere, and you get the full horizon to be able to track and to follow satellites. That's why you don't put them at the bottom of a valley.
Yeah.
You need to see. So So we work basically in probably one of the most beautiful stations on the planet. Maybe Chile would beat us, I'm thinking. So our day-to-day work means driving up this very steep hill, and we get to our station, and we get to have this panoramic view of huge fjords and glaciers that spill into the fjords every day, basically. So I cannot complain about that view. And in the dark season, it's completely pitch black, but if it's clear skies, you can see these northern lights twinkling over our antennas.
It's really beautiful, yeah.
It is, yes. So that's kind of the environment that we work and live in, basically.
Yeah. So a practical question, why does KSAT why Svalbard? I'm sure there's other plateaus and other wide open spaces. What makes this, aside from its proximity to Norway, a location for an organization to choose to put up satellites? It seems, like you said, it's very extreme. Why not Rio de Janeiro?
Exactly, right? Way better. At least for me, right? You know, I could surf every day instead of ski. I would not complain. Actually, it's mainly because of physics, really. We follow polar orbiting satellites. So what they do is that they're able to track the entire planet. And in order to do so, they need to be able to go around both poles. And you have various orbits you can choose to do this, which gets into a bit more complicated themes, which you should probably talk to a bit more qualified person about. But the concept being is that every time they reach the North Pole, they want to maybe downlink, send their information down. And the fun thing is that the closer you are to the North Pole, the more of these orbits you can actually contact your satellite every day.
Okay.
So by being so close to North Pole, we get basically the maximum number of orbits that a satellite will run in a day. So it orbits generally about every 90 minutes. So that's about 14 to 15 orbits every day. And the more south you go on the planet, the fewer of these contacts you will then be able to see, because maybe some of them are just over the horizon. So so we basically can offer the maximum amount of downlink time on the planet by being located here. And basically this is the northernmost territory Norway has access to establish such a ground station. So that's where it is. And in fact, we also have a sister ground station in Troll, Antarctica. But that is actually, in relation to the South Pole, it's farther away than we are to the North Pole. So so we are obviously the best ones.
Yeah, you think of Antarctica as very central around that South Pole, and then you realize it's a massive continent, I guess. And you'll have whole places, the coast, where things can get barged in. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. So, like SvalSat is the ground station just located on Svalbard, but we have an entire global network of ground stations. So SvalSat and Troll are two of many ground stations, but I just work on this particular one, so I don't have to worry too much about the others.
Nice, yeah. So talking about your job a little bit, so you have a very unique job, being able to look and understand the world from above. You know, we all see those photos if we go on the internet, but it's not a daily occurrence for us seeing these top-down views of the world. So my question for you is, what are some of the things which first surprised you when you began your work? And what are some things that continue to surprise you about what you're able to view and just that perspective it gives you?
Yeah, like in terms of the actual satellite photos themselves, I think for me, the most striking thing is that they are absolutely gorgeous. I mean, it's like I have a little bit of an art perspective also in my background, and so to be able to appreciate basically the colors and the patterns that you get from your photos, I mean, they are just stunning. And it's not the kind of thing you'll ever see when you're walking in the forest on your own. It's something that you can only get from drone footage, for example. Maybe some people will notice that drone footage also, it gives you a completely different perspective of things that you might see every day. But to see it from space is just, it gives you a good appreciation of this planet, to be honest. And we've always had records of astronauts saying, oh, how beautiful is the planet when you see it from above, and it'll change your perspective on life, and all this nice things to think about. But to the average person, they've never seen it. So how would you relate to that, right? But by being able to produce satellite imagery, which you can show people, that I think that gives people the that feeling of just how incredible our planet is, and all the physical processes that form everything that you see in your day-to-day life, which we kind of maybe go around our little bubble world, but we forget that there's so much around us.
Yeah.
And to be able to see it from there really, I think, homes in on that you're a piece of a much, much, much bigger process.
Yeah.
So I would say that that's the thing. And there are competitions. For example, internally, we had like an art competition for submitting the nicest satellite photos. So what's really nice about the satellite industry is that you have several missions which actually offer open source data. These missions cost millions and millions of dollars to launch. All right. And these are in the case of government programs, these are programs that every taxpayer has put their money into, right? And it used to be very expensive to be able to purchase these images, to be able to do your research or whatever. But now, due to, I guess, a lot of people's initiative, quite a few of this data is open source, and you can download multiple platforms in your own machine at home to be able to process satellite data. And from there, you get these stunning photos, basically, from the entire planet. So we've had some competitions and some submissions and some winners, which I'd love to share with you, of course.
Yeah, that'd be great. We'd love that. Is there a region of the planet that you most enjoy seeing images from, or whether it's your hometown or whether it's like a really biodiverse region or some beautiful foliage, or do you have like a favorite or even like a type of environment?
Yeah, I like the junction of environments probably the most. So we have some very nice photos of city areas, but I personally find them a little bit dull. But whenever you get pictures of like estuaries, like terrestrial and ocean or terrestrial and lake or any kind of water and land junction, you end up with interesting, really complex figures in the terrain, and also these really intense differences in color, which you can manipulate, of course, in your software programs. But in general, they look, I think, really impressive. And you don't often hang around in estuaries, right?
No, they're buggy.
No, they're buggy. So this is a way of being able to see this incredible marshland or hotspots also of diversity from the air, basically.
Nice. Well, that leads into my next question, also about your work. So your role means that, clearly you have a global perspective, but it's not just about the size of our planet, but also about, as you alluded to, it's functioning as a singular yet complex system. We are a closed system. How does this understanding impact your daily life as a human being and your personal practices as an outdoors person? Because you recreate, you have to get outside. You can't be on Svalbard all year long and just, be in a little cave of data glow. You have to like get out.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh my goodness, yes. I think I would go crazy if I didn't go outside. It's we have a small town of like 2,000 people, so if you just stay in there, I think you'd go a little crazy.
Yeah.
Most of the people living here have a lot of recreation activities. So that's kind of the thing that we do.
Yeah.
In our spare time anyway. I think my boss is out boating right now, actually. He's out with his boat and fishing, so. But yeah, no, in terms of a global perspective, I mean, Svalbard is kind of one of probably the best examples of a very international community, because it was signed, it's a treaty island. So any country which has signed this treaty is able to, those citizens are able to come here and work and live and do their thing. So as a result, my friends and my coworkers come from all over the planet. And so it'd be a bit strange to work in the satellite industry where you have customers from many different countries and then also colleagues from many different countries if you did not have a global perspective.
Yeah.
Or at least you'd learn it very quick. And I think that that perspective allows me to be able to interact, I think, in a really positive way with all my colleagues and my friends. And it gives you basically, I think, the ability to accept humanity as they are as a species. And I think that's the kind of the concept that I think followed me from as far back as I remember, was that you're going to get the chance to be able to meet and talk to people from all over the world one day. And that's actually a privilege. And not everyone gets to do that. And I think that it definitely, it allows me to be able to handle a lot of the negative news media which has come out recently. And I worry a lot about the rest of the planet, of course, but when you get to meet people and really see that at our heart, Homo sapiens is a species, that's what we are. And it involves an incredible amount of diversity. And I think that should, I only really enjoy that. To me, it's only a positive thing.
Yeah. Excellent. Well, how do these understandings of diversity, and not just working with international peers and colleagues, I guess, affect your personal attitudes about the world and our ecology? And, things are always changing, and I'm sure you're viewing climate change very radically up there in Svalbard because our Arctic regions are being disproportionately affected. How does that affect you, and also balancing that with being able to get out and recreate and all these things and live in such a remote place?
Yeah. I mean, it's in a lot of ways it's quite terrifying, because with climate change, I think Svalbard is one of the fastest warming places on the planet. So we're kind of the canary in the coal mine. But you can say the same about various regions in Siberia, in Alaska, in polar Canada. And although you don't hear about it very often, it is there and it's happening. And so we get to see that in our day-to-day life with building foundations, for example. We live in permafrost, permanently frozen ground, and the engineering that is involved in building your buildings in such land is very specific. But when that changes, those concepts no longer apply.
Yeah.
So you can see it a lot in building damage and loss of property, basically. So that directly affects you. Because if you're one of the unfortunate people that were a victim of this, what are you going to do about it?
Yeah.
So it hits pretty hard. And unfortunately, it will only hit harder in the future. Which is why it's so important for me, for example, to be doing what I'm doing. Because if we don't have the data, if we don't have the knowledge, if we do not have operators here 24/7 working to get this information to people and to governments, we can never make the decisions that we need with facts to be able to react, to be able to prepare for our future. So, and then to relax, because that's pretty heavy. That sits heavily. That's a heavy burden to have on your shoulders, right? So that's why it's so important to go outside, breathe in the fresh air, go on your hikes, go on your cycling trips, go running, breathe it in, and recreate, because otherwise I think this would all be too much to handle, to be honest.
Yeah.
So you have to go outside with your friends and your family and be able to appreciate the life that you do have. And we're very lucky here. We have access to nature areas outside our front door. I have a dog that I love very much, and we go skiing, we go hiking, we do all these nice things together. And it's only really by recreating that you get in touch with the nature that you work with around you.
Yeah.
So it's my way to blow off steam, to be honest. And I find it really helps me to be able to live a more positive life and to build better relationships with the people that I keep company with.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, that brings me to my next question, which is about environmental stewardship, which you touched on a little bit with your recreation answer. sort of giving you have that top-down perspective, and what does that mean to translate to a interpersonal relationship with recreation, the land, the nature right outside our front door, in our backyard, and the crack of the sidewalk. And so, we all understand environmental stewardship, and it's this really large and pretty general idea. But we understand in our field that it's really only sustainable when it's a personal value, which individuals act upon, not because we have the cognitive knowing that it's right, but because we believe that it is. We have all of our studies say that there's zero correlate or causation between knowledge and action. It's all about belief and action, and value and action. And also for all of us, it's not something we're just kind of born knowing. We have to learn it gradually over time. We don't just kind of come into this world and understand how we need to separate our recycling out and things like that. So how have your experiences growing up in Eastern Canada and with your work and as an outdoor recreator shaped your personal practice of stewardship? How did it come about? And how does your current work continue to influence how those practices change? Because they are always changing.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm picking up too many hobbies. That's environmental stewardship in general as a concept is best probably approached in small bites. It's a huge topic and way of life, actually, and it takes, I think, decades to build up yourself. So I actually spoke to my mom about this, and I had to ask, by the way, I remember us being raised in a certain way. Was that true? And where did you get these ideas from? Because, and I came to agree with her in that we think it's actually a combination of things. It's nature and nurture. So you do have to learn a lot of these practices and concepts, but also someone had to think of it in the first place. So deep down, I think there is also a part of us which also gives us the kind of inclination to start to think about environmental stewardship, at least like a kernel, a seed that grows into something bigger. And then, so I asked my mom, where we grew up hiking and cycling and enjoying the nature around Montreal area, Vermont, Eastern Canada. So our weekends were spent in the forest playing, and I distinctly remember we were always very careful with things like our garbage and our litter, our hand-packed lunches, where we got our food from, and just how we respected the terrain that we were then using, basically. And so we grew up basically learning to respect nature. It didn't have a title back then. My mom never told me, oh, according to this concept, you must blah, 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 blah. Of course, I learned later there's this whole concept, you'll leave no trace. Great. That just kind of fortified what I had already learned as a kid, basically. And she was saying, no, actually, it's just the way that I also was raised, to respect and to know that you're not the center of the universe, and your actions matter, and what you produce matters. And just to think a little bit outside of your own bubble, So my parents really, I think, helped us to learn that, basically. And I'm assuming other people do as well. I assume that families communicate these concepts in a very similar way. Not all, unfortunately, but in particular mine, I think, did. And that just kind of continued on through university and picking up different hobbies, and then going to Norway and picking up rather extreme hobbies like backcountry skiing and fjell running and climbing and all these things, which took a walk in the forest to a rather crazy level, I have to admit. And every time I engaged in any of these activities, at least I try not to willfully destroy the area around me that I use. I don't want to be a hypocrite. I don't want to say I'm perfect, but I do try my best to think about this, to make sure that what I do does not negatively impact other people, other animals, and also the plants and terrain around me. You could be very strict about that, but I think it's all about compromise. And So any activity I do, I try my best. But in reality, some of our activities require the use of engines, the use of petrol and diesel. And we do produce garbage. And that garbage from Svalbard at least has to, be shipped down to Sweden. And we sell it and it's burned down there. So I'm well aware that my environmental impact up here on Svalbard is enormous compared to other places. And there's a lot fewer compromises I can really manage to kind of make it a bit better. But it's a choice that I made by living up here, and that's why it's so important to do the work that I do, because that way it's not all for nothing.
Yeah.
So I hope I'm making an impact, maybe a little one, a tiny, tiny little one, but it's there. And we'll just, and I think that kind of concept is going to continue for the rest of my life. I think I'm always going to want to think about how do my actions affect the people and the environment around me. I think that's going to be a concept that's going to found a lot of the decisions that I make in the future. So.
Yeah, that's really interesting. We, no matter who we are, we always have the cost for our livelihood, the condition in which we live.
Mm-hmm.
I have electricity right now. That is here in Utah because of primarily coal, a little bit of hydro, and a little bit of wind. But it's mostly coal.
We're 100% coal. Don't worry about that. We are.
Yeah. And so it's really talking to other folks who live in different areas where those impacts are either how the disproportionality weighs out. That's really interesting. And it's really great too that you're also able to make the self-identification that, there's an impact for me being here. The earth would have to be a little greener if I wasn't, but also what is that long view and how am I translating that value and that opportunity cost into that long view of we need these data. We need to inspire people. We need to make sure satellites don't crash in space and make space junk.
Oh my goodness, yes. I believe there was an incident in 2019 where the boom of a dead satellite came within estimated 15, 20 meters of another.
Oh, goodness.
It was on the news. I remember this. And I was at work on shift. I was in the operations department, and it was supposed to happen at around midnight. And I remember being awake watching the news to see, is this going to happen?
Yeah.
Because the consequences of that are catastrophic beyond belief. So, although I think that topic is actually going to be addressed quite a bit in the conference, the SvalSat conference.
Oh, great.
Space garbage.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. I saw some of the headlines and the posters. There's going to be some of this addressed. So that's really interesting.
Yeah.
But I just want to say also, I also don't judge anyone that's here on Svalbard for whatever reason that they are here. People have their own reasons. And although we, I think, love to make each other feel guilty for the choices that we make, it's also about compromise.
Yeah.
So my values are mine, and I make the choices I make. Hopefully it makes a difference or not, but I'm not going to preach above anyone else here on Svalbard or in the US with various sources of energy. I mean, the best we can do is just to try harder.
Yeah.
Really.
Ultimately, it's not the individual that's choosing to make that energy choice. No. It's kind of the hand we're dealt, and how do you play that hand?
And just try your best to have a voice and to improve our technology and to come up with solutions, solve those problems.
Yeah. Excellent. Well, Karolina, is there anything else you'd like to tell the general public of Cache Valley, Utah? Aside from, we'll see you in 2021 at SvalSat.
I'd love that. I would love that. That'd be awesome. I kind of miss conferences and learning about other parts of what I'm interested in. It's kind of we're all part of a much bigger picture, so it's nice to take your head out of the sand.
Yes.
And look around a little. So it'd be really nice. But no, I think we've covered some really good topics.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for your time and for satellite linking in using likely some satellites that you all watch or at least.
This might be the fiber cable. Sorry.
Oh,
Damn
well,
it.
it's still technology, and we'll give you credit for it until it's denied. But thank you so much, and have a happy rest of your summer day. And I hope you see your first star not too soon, but soon enough.
Yeah, absolutely. Looking forward to it.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.